Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
It was a warm afternoon, the sun casting a golden glow over the neighborhood as I parked my car in front of the house. I was supposed to feel excitement, joy even. After all, we were celebrating 2 milestones, Hannah's acceptance into college and Spencer's promotion. But as I stepped out of the car, my heart clenched with an inexplicable heaviness. That's when I saw them. Garbage bags, piled up on the front lawn, spilling out with my clothes, books, and even personal items I hadn't touched in years. I froze. For a moment, I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe they were cleaning the garage and accidentally mixed in some of my things. Maybe this was all just one big misunderstanding. But as I approached, the sinking feeling in my chest told me otherwise. "Olivia, you're home early," Spencer's voice cut through the air. I turned toward the front door where he stood, leaning casually against the frame as if nothing was wrong, as if this wasn't my life scattered in trash bags. What is this?" I stammered, barely recognizing my own voice. It was shaking, weak. Hannah appeared beside him, a smirk on her face. "We need the space," she said coldly, arms crossed over her chest. "Grandma's moving in and you're just in the way." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. My heart pounded, confusion twisting inside me like a storm. "In the way?" I repeated, my voice now barely above a whisper. I live here." Spencer's expression hardened. "Not anymore," he said. "It's time you found somewhere else to stay. We don't need you, Olivia." The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had given everything to this family. Years of my life, my energy, my love, and now, in return, they were throwing me out like yesterday's trash. My legs felt weak beneath me, but I refused to crumble in front of them. "Not now." "You'll be fine," Hannah added, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Thanks for the college fund, though." I stared at them, disbelief giving way to a simmering rage deep inside me. How had it come to this? For years I had put up with Spencer's manipulative words, his emotional distance, and Hannah's increasing cruelty. I had convinced myself it would get better, that if I just tried harder, loved them more, they would change. But they hadn't changed. I had. I wasn't the fragile woman who once believed their lies, their gaslighting. I wasn't the wife who swallowed her pride every time Spencer insulted me, or the stepmother who silently endured Hannah's disdain. No, something within me had shifted. And as I stood there, gazing at my discarded life on the lawn, I realized that this was the final breaking point. "I'll leave," I said quietly, forcing my voice to remain steady. "But you'll regret this." I locked eyes with Spencer, his coldness like a mirror reflecting the years of silent pain he had caused me. He shrugged, unaffected. "Just take your stuff and go." Without another word, I turned away, my hands trembling as I gathered the bags from the yard. With each step to my car, I felt the weight of my old life slipping away, and with it, the chains of control they had over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared. I was angry, and that anger fueled my resolve. As I drove away, the tears blurred my vision, but I wiped them away with the back of my hand. This wasn't the end. No, this was the beginning of something new. A life that was mine, free from them. The drive to Aunt Clara's house was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as the anger simmered beneath the surface. My mind kept replaying Spencer's face, cold and indifferent, as if the years we spent together meant nothing. I couldn't stop hearing Hannah's mocking voice in my head, her cruelty so sharp it cut deeper than I'd realized. Pulling into Aunt Clara's driveway, I took a deep breath, trying to steady my emotions. I had no idea how I was going to explain everything to her, but I knew she'd understand. She always had. I knocked on the door, feeling a mixture of shame and relief wash over me. Within seconds, the door swung open, revealing Aunt Clara's warm, concerned face. "Olivia," she asked, her eyes scanning my face for answers. "What's wrong?" "It's Spencer," I began, my voice breaking. "He threw me out, Clara. Him and Hannah. They threw me out." Her expression shifted from confusion to pure outrage. "He did what?" She ushered me inside quickly, her hand on my shoulder. Come in, we'll talk inside." The moment I stepped into her cozy living room, the tears I had been holding back finally spilled over. I sank into the armchair, my body trembling as I let out everything I had been holding inside. Clara sat across from me, listening quietly as I recounted the whole miserable scene. When I finished, she leaned forward, her eyes flashing with anger. "That man," she said, her voice tight, "never deserved you, Olivia. I've always known something wasn't right with him, but throwing you out like that? No. He's going to regret it." I nodded, wiping away the tears that still clung to my cheeks. "I can't believe I let it get this far," I whispered. "I stayed, even when things got worse. I thought I could fix it." Clara shook her head, reaching out to grasp my hand. "It's not your fault, honey. You gave everything to that family, and they took advantage of it. But now it's time to focus on you." I nodded again, feeling a sense of resolution building inside me. I need to start over. I need to rebuild my life without them. "And you will," Clara said firmly. "You'll stay here as long as you need, and we'll figure out what's next together." Her words were a balm to my wounded heart. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone, like someone was in my corner. I wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain: this was the first step towards something better. As I settled into the guest room that night, I thought about the life I was leaving behind. The years of trying to please Spencer, of bending over backward to be the perfect wife, of enduring Hannah's disdain. It all seemed so distant now, like a fog lifting after years of darkness. I lay down, staring up at the ceiling, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it was painful to realize how little I meant to them. But it also felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest, a burden I had been carrying for far too long. For the first time in years, I was free. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, waking me earlier than usual. I hadn't slept much, but somehow I felt lighter, like the oppressive weight of the past years had begun to lift. I sat up, glancing around Aunt Clara's guest room. It was small but cozy, with soft blue walls and a quilt draped over the bed. I swung my legs over the side, feeling the cool wooden floor beneath my feet, and for a moment, I allowed myself to savor the silence. No Spencer, no Hannah, just me. After a quick shower, I made my way to the kitchen, where Aunt Clara was already at the stove, flipping pancakes. The smell of coffee and syrup filled the air, warming my heart. It had been too long since I'd felt this kind of comfort. "Morning," she said, glancing over her shoulder with a smile. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I expected," I replied, taking a seat at the table. I can't believe how much I needed this. Space, peace, a fresh start. Aunt Clara poured me a cup of coffee and sat down across from me. "It's time, Olivia. You've been living in that shadow for too long. What's your plan?" The question made me pause. I hadn't thought much beyond the day I left. Rebuilding my life seemed like such a monumental task, and I wasn't sure where to start. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've lost so much of myself, Clara. I don't even know what I like anymore." "That's okay," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You'll figure it out, one step at a time. What about your career? You loved working at the art gallery before you met Spencer." I nodded, a flicker of excitement sparking inside me. "I did. But Spencer convinced me it wasn't practical, so I stopped." "Well, now you don't have Spencer holding you back," she said, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. "Maybe it's time to reach out to some old contacts." I smiled, feeling the smallest hint of hope. It had been years since I'd thought about the gallery, the way I used to immerse myself in the colors, the textures, the stories behind the pieces. Could I really go back? "You're right," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I need to try. I'm not the same person I was before. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I can be someone new." Clara beamed, her eyes twinkling with pride. "That's the spirit. You'll be surprised at how much you still have to offer." That afternoon, I sat at Aunt Clara's kitchen table with my laptop, scrolling through job listings and reconnecting with old acquaintances in the art world. It felt strange, like I was dusting off an old part of myself that I had forgotten existed. But it also felt right. This was the beginning of something new. A new chapter, a new life. As I closed my laptop, I realized that the pain of what Spencer and Hannah had done still lingered, but it no longer consumed me. I had taken my first steps away from them, and with each step, I felt a little stronger, a little more like the Olivia I was always meant to be. It was a crisp afternoon when Spencer's call came. I stared at the phone vibrating on the table, his name flashing across the screen. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, letting it ring until his voice became a distant echo. But something inside me had changed. I wasn't afraid anymore. With a deep breath, I picked up the phone. Olivia, Spencer's voice was clipped, businesslike, as if the past weeks hadn't happened. We need to talk about Hannah's tuition. The payments are due, and I assume you still have access to the account. I closed my eyes, feeling the old frustration bubbling up. But this time, I didn't let it consume me. Spencer, that account is in my name, and I've already withdrawn the funds. Silence. For a moment, I imagined him sitting in his office, his hand tightening around the phone, his brow furrowing in disbelief. What do you mean you've withdrawn the funds? That money was for Hannah. That money was mine, I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. You never asked me before deciding how it would be used. And after everything, after the way you and your mother treated me, why would I continue to support Hannah's education? You both made it clear I wasn't part of the family. You're punishing Hannah for something she didn't do, Spencer snapped, his anger rising. She's just a kid, Olivia. This isn't fair to her. My grip tightened on the phone. Fair? Was it fair when she stood by and watched you throw my things onto the lawn? When she refused to speak up, to defend me, even after everything I did for her? Spencer exhaled sharply, but he didn't respond. I could hear the tension in his silence. I could feel the guilt he was trying to ignore. I'm done, I continued, more calmly now. I'm not going to fund Hannah's education. I'm not going to continue being the one who cleans up your messes. You both made your choices. Now you'll have to live with them. There was another beat of silence before Spencer spoke again, his voice lower, colder. You'll regret this, Olivia. I doubt that, I replied, and for the first time in years I meant it. I hung up and set the phone down, feeling an odd sense of relief. I wasn't just facing the truth of who Spencer was. I was also facing the truth of who I had become. And for once, I wasn't ashamed of it. I had reclaimed my power, and there was no going back. The day I filed for divorce felt surreal. I walked into the courthouse with my head high, clutching the evidence I had painstakingly gathered over the last few weeks. Records of financial manipulation, texts where Spencer belittled me, and even witness statements from neighbors who had seen too much. I wasn't just seeking a divorce. I was seeking justice for every piece of myself they had tried to take. As I sat across from my lawyer, Mrs. Goodwin, she shuffled through the papers, her sharp eyes scanning every line. This is more than enough, Olivia, she said, looking up at me. You'll not only win the divorce but reclaim your house and secure financial independence. Spencer doesn't stand a chance. I nodded, the knot in my chest loosening slightly. It's time I took back what's mine. We walked into the courtroom that afternoon. Spencer sat on the other side, his lawyer beside him, looking grim. He didn't meet my eyes, but I could sense his tension. He wasn't in control anymore, and it was killing him. Hannah wasn't there, but I hadn't expected her to be. I was no longer the woman they had discarded like old furniture. I was someone they didn't recognize, someone they couldn't manipulate. As the hearing unfolded, I listened as Mrs. Goodwin presented every detail of our case with precision. Spencer's lawyer tried to counter, but the evidence was overwhelming. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall. Your Honor, I began for years. I was made to feel insignificant by the man I loved and the family I devoted myself to. I endured manipulation, belittlement, and outright cruelty. But today, I stand here no longer as a victim, but as a woman who has reclaimed her worth. I'm asking for what I deserve, my freedom, my home, and the financial independence I worked for. The judge nodded, his expression thoughtful. Spencer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. When the ruling finally came, I could hardly breathe. The court finds in favor of Mrs. Olivia Marks, the judge declared. The house will be returned to her name, and all financial claims made by Mr. Marks are dismissed. Divorce granted. I exhaled, the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. Spencer shot me a look, part disbelief, part anger, but I felt nothing for him anymore. His power over me was gone. Outside the courthouse, Mrs. Goodwin shook my hand. Congratulations, Olivia, you've won. I smiled, a real smile this time. No, I've finally taken back my life.